Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast, where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture. We talk to producers all over the country, from small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations. Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades, we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs. Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Pastured Pig Podcast time again. Just some quick updates before we get into our interview. We've had our first snow already, so here we are in the 1st of November, dealing with snow and some record temperatures, although I think almost everybody in the country is dealing with that right now. We were able to get our farrowing barn pretty much complete, just have some final touches to do, get the gate and some other key elements in there. But we are expecting piglets in about 2 weeks. So we'll see how that goes. We're hoping Merida will enjoy this new accommodations and farrowing would go well. Hopefully we can keep her in there and she doesn't go out in the middle of the woods and farrow. We're going to jump right into our interview. We've got another good one tonight and hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you on the backside. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast. I've got another great interview set up for this evening. Hope everyone enjoys this as we dive into it. Tonight, I have Lindsay Laughlin with Prodigy Farms in Pella, Iowa. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, Troy. Thank you.
All right. Well, gives people a little peek behind the curtain here. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but I think we're over that now, so hopefully we won't crash and burn in the process.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about Prodigy Farm. I mentioned it's in Iowa, so there's some things we can assume there, but give us the 40,000-foot elevation of what you've got going on at your farm.
Yes, so we are Prodigy Farms, and we are located in Pella, which is a little Dutch community, southeastern central Iowa. So whichever part of the state wants to claim us. So our farm really focuses on organic pastured meat, and we do that using a method that integrates several species together. So we really also have chosen breeds that thrive on grass. So we actually have very little grain input throughout our entire farm operation. It's about as minimal as it can be. And then we also focus on heritage breeds. So, and in that realm of heritage breeds, even smaller we go into, our farm is home to 5 species of critically endangered heritage livestock breeds. So, and all of them have a purpose and they all work well together. And so we have everything from our Dexter cows. They are actually not one of our critically endangered breeds, but are very important to the functioning of our farm, and they are 100% grass-fed, grass-finished cattle. And then as we come down to the smaller species, we have San Clemente Island goats. They are fabulous because they are browsers, so they clean up a lot of the brush. They also eat a lot of stuff that the cows really don't want to eat. They are fantastic little goats. They grow really slow. They are a critically endangered breed with a population of less than 800 right now.
Wow.
And they're really interesting. We've had a couple different breeds of goats over my lifetime on this farm. But this is the first breed that actually is completely free range. So they are very intelligent. They're almost deer-like in their mannerisms and when you watch them, but they go out, range our 40 acres, but they always end up coming back at night. So they're just really interesting little goats to have around. And they are actually a dual-purpose breed. So they have a very high butterfat content milk. They are a milking breed, but they are also on the arc of taste as a meat breed as well. So a very dual-purpose breed. They are slow growing, though. So they're about 18 months to 3 years before they are up to size for processing on the goats. And then we also have one of my favorite on the farm is, of course, my Mulefoot hogs.
Okay.
And those guys are absolutely, like I said, one of my hands-down favorite animals, something that is very new to us. I had not previously had pigs, neither had my husband when we jumped into the Mulefoot hog world. So, but they are very important to the functioning of our farm. Actually, right now, they are out in their pastures. The pastures that they're in, they're really tilling up right now. And so that will allow us to reseed, do winter or spring seeding, depending upon what weather we have. And the importance with them is they go out, they till up certain areas of the pasture, and we're able to reseed. And we reseed with a different variety than what is already there. So we focus on stuff that is more high protein in the legumes, the clover, the alfalfa, the rape, the buckwheat, and let those things grow up. And then when our goats go out to graze that area, or our cattle, they actually have a higher variety in their diet. So their mineral and protein content, varies, and their diet is much broader than just being on grass alone. So we see them being much more thrifty animals as well. So, and then we go on down to the smaller ones. We have lots of poultry on our farm as well. And that would be our barred Holland chickens, are another one of our critically endangered breeds, and our Dutch hookbill ducks. And we do have turkeys as well, including the Beltsville small white, which is a critically endangered breed too. And the birds are very important. They go out in the pasture, and of course, the ducks, not so much. The ducks are really great at reducing insects, but the turkeys and the chickens go out and they dig through all of the manure and spread it out and naturally harrow the pasture and keep the pastures cleaned up for us in that way. So everybody kind of works together and has a purpose here on our farm.
Wow, that's a great setup, man. That's there's a lot to unpack there. So let's talk about the size of the farm. How many acres are you doing all of this on?
So we are just 40 acres here on our home farm. So we have many small pastures that everybody can kind of rotate through, and then one larger area that the goats and the cattle and everybody like that is free range into. Of course, one of the things with getting started in this, I actually grew up on this farm, Troy, but we rented it out for pasture for a multitude of years. And so we just recently decided that we were going to not rent all of our pasture anymore and start putting it to use for ourselves. So it's been a big undertaking. We have a lot of infrastructure still that needs to be built, in the line of fences and everything else to allow the hogs to be out on more of the pastured areas that we have. But all of that, of course, takes time and, of course, takes some money. So it's a process that we are starting, and it's just a continuum all the time, it seems.
Interesting. So obviously with that polyculture going on, you have a lot to manage, but there's a real symbiotic relationship between these animals, regardless of the fact that they're endangered. Like you said, you're looking for something that was high browse, something that really would do well on pasture and not need a lot of grain input. So with all those animals and the Mulefoot specifically, how much grain are you? Are you using any grain? Are you grain free there?
We use very little grain. Our cattle and our goats are actually completely grain-free. Our hogs, our cattle and goats do receive a very high-quality moose mineral. Our hogs actually just get fed less than 10% of their body weight a day in grains. And our ducks and our chickens are probably right about that. They just get a treat when they come in at night. Of course, all of that changes slightly in the winter, with actually the only ones that increase their grain intake over the winter are our poultry, just because there's not the bugs available in our harsh winter climate for them to be out foraging that way. So they do increase their amount of grain over the winter, but we feed relatively little, except for we do a batch of Cornish cross broilers on pasture in the spring, and we do a batch of broad-breasted turkeys on pasture in the fall. And of course, those are more conventional livestock, and they eat a tremendous amount of grain. So it's always interesting and always makes me thankful that our heritage breeds have much less grain consumption than the two conventional breeds that we have for just such a short time, because there's a really big difference, and there's a really big difference in the feed bill too.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Well,
you said you grew up on this farm. So have you been experienced as a farmer all your life, or did you have another career at some point?
I did, yes. So my father bought this farm when I was 5 years old, and we still lived in town but had the farm out here. Then as I got to be about 13, they built a home out here, and we moved to the country. So we always had, growing up, a herd of cow-calves out in the pastures, and I always, of course, had a few goats and a horse. There were we always had some poultry around as well, and over the years, we definitely had lots of pets come and go too, like potbelly pigs and some rabbits and things like that. But however, as I grew up, my career actually took me into the field of nursing. And so I was a nurse for several years, and I absolutely loved it and enjoyed the experience. The nursing fields that I was in really focused on holistic care. So not just medically what was wrong and medically what we were going to do to fix it, but focused on the body and the person as a whole, emotionally, mentally, medically, yes, but also physically, what we could do to help that person. And so, interesting enough, it's been 6 years now since I left my nursing career. And so I see a lot of the traits coming through from my nursing career being used here on the farm every single day. It's nice because there was a decent amount of nutrition background there as well. And as interesting as it seems that the animals and the people kind of flow together. So when I'm taking care of them and giving them, everything that they need, it seems that our animals are healthy and thriving. And I can definitely relate that back to my nursing career in how, people became healthier and thriving through certain things that we were able to do with their environment, with their diet, with exercise as well, and not just necessarily medication. So.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's great to be able to apply that. And I'm sure there's multiple times you see those certain things manifest to show that there is a lot of crossover there with the animal care and as far as people care goes as well.
Yes. And I'm thankful that I have the livestock, because it definitely hits more on that nursing level of things where you get to have a relationship with what you're caring for. And so I guess that's probably why we do livestock, is because I get to have that relationship, and I really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's go to your Mulefoots for a second. So, or as a plural, Mulefoot, mule feet. so let's go.
Yes.
So, why did you choose the Mulefoot?
So, funny enough, we one day I kind of looked at my husband and realized we were older when we got married, and he was actually born and raised in town. He was not a farm kid, and so God bless him, he inherited me and the funny farm. And so here, it's probably been about a year and a half ago now, I went to him and I said, "Hey, honey, we should get some pigs." And he went, I like bacon. And so from there, the conversation went, and he asked lots of good questions that really made me kind of dig into, okay, what do we want this to look like as far as what are the pigs going to add to the farm overall? And then, the big question of what kind of breed of hog are we wanting to bring in? So we started doing our research and started having lots of conversations on it. And we came down to two breeds that piqued our interest. One being the Hereford hog. They were readily available in our area. And the other being the Mulefoot hog. And so I talked to several breeders all over. Interesting enough, in our exploration of bringing in pastured pigs to our farm, I had several conversations with farmer friends in our area, and the general consensus was the same as I was, explaining what I was looking for and what I was wanting to do was, you can't do that. You know, we have too harsh of weather in Iowa. There's too many breeds that have been bred to confinement situations. Like, what you want is you're looking for a unicorn, you know? So,
right, yeah.
However, through those conversations, I got to learn so much about the history of pigs in the United States. And in Iowa, we're the number one pork producing, you know, state in the United States of America. And so those conversations were just so interesting. And I really enjoyed learning the history of the confinements and everything. But so we continued information gathering. I talked to several breeders all over the country, people that had Herefords, people that had Mulefoots, and we had a laundry list of positive traits of each breed and a few cons, you know. But what really it came down to was we were kind of sitting there looking at it, and it's like, goodness gracious, it doesn't feel like we're comparing apples to apples here. And by the grace of the good Lord, there was actually a lady that I found online clear up in New York State that had owned both breeds. And so I decided to call her one day and say, all right, I would really like to know what your experience with these two pigs is. And she was very gracious. And she, you know, she said she absolutely adored the Herefords. They were very quick maturing. They did really good out on the pasture. You know, seemed like it would be a good fit for us. But then she moved on to her description of the Mulefoots. And she said, you know, they're really not comparable. The Herefords are going to grow out much more quickly than the Mulefoots. However, the temperament of the Mulefoots were exemplary in her opinion, and that's what she had seen over the years. And, you know, that's really all she had to say to completely win me over. So we started our search for some Mulefoot hogs, and we found a few. And so a couple months later, we were all packed up, taking our pickup down to southern Illinois to pick up our first Mulefoot pigs. And, you know, it was really funny because, like I said, we are in Iowa, right? And when we mentioned to friends that we were going clear to southern Illinois, 6 hours away, to get pigs, they're like, what are you doing? You live in Iowa. There are pigs everywhere. Why do you need to go so far? And so we did and made that road trip home. And it's been just over a year now, probably about 15, 16 months since the pigs first landed on our farm. And it has been quite a ride. I wouldn't trade it for anything. They're one of my absolute favorite animals. They are very slow growing though. So we are looking at our processing time being when they are anywhere from 12 to 18 months of age.
Yeah.
And I'm told that can be expedited slightly by feeding them, having them more grain input into them. However, that also, I've been told that also greatly increases the amount of lard on them as well. So we have not done that. We have a system right now that works really, really well for us, and are happy to now, like I said, we're probably about 16 months into this adventure. We have successfully sent our first group of feeders off to the processor last month, and they were all in that 12 to 14 month age range. And their hanging weights were anywhere from 128 to 140 pounds. And then we have also successfully now farrowed out our first 2 sows on the farm. So that seemed like a major victory there as well. So
yeah. So I was going to ask you, so your first batch that you brought back was some growers that you're going to finish, but then also you had in that same collection a breeding set. So do you have 1 boar and two gilts that you're going to breed, or were they already proven sows, or what'd you have there?
We do. What we actually have 1 boar. So in that first group that we brought back was a pen of feeders and 1 boar. And then we went a while later from another farm and got 2 little gilts that are registered Mulefoots for breeding. So we have 2 sows and our 1 registered boar. which is a good fit for us. We're very busy, small farm family, and we really fit more of a niche market with what we have. So we're not looking so much at, high production, but we definitely focus on quality. But the Mulefoot just is a great fit for our farm, especially because we focus on organic production. So we use all organic minerals and all organic grains. And with the Mulefoot having such a small grain input, that actually makes that very doable and yet still very affordable as well.
Yeah, that I can see where larger consumption, of course, is really just going to make the feed costs so high that it's going to be tough to get that investment back. So you mentioned farrowing. So you had two of your gilts farrow. How did their litters turn out? What litter sizes are we looking at? How did they perform as mothers?
Yeah, so they were probably a little bit young when we bred them. The one farrowed out 4. And we did have a loss of one piglet within the first 48 hours. The other gilt farrowed out 5. So, however, they are a slower growing pig. They did come from litters that were size of 13 piglets. So it will be interesting to see in the future if their litters grow or not. However, they are absolutely fantastic mothers. There is not a bit of aggression that I have seen from either of those girls. They've just been absolutely wonderful. They're very, we didn't have the one loss that we did have was not due to fault of the sow. But they're just very, very good with their piglets. They farrowed, both of them farrowed well on their own with no assistance. We knew the time was coming. We knew that, it was going to be less than 24 hours and we were going to have piglets, and went out the next morning and here was mom and babies and everyone was happy and healthy. And they're just their demeanor is just unchanging. Even, from the point in time, we question that, of course. And of course, us being new to pigs, that was one of those, I've never been around a sow that had just farrowed. This should be interesting, right. Moments in our little farm life here. But they are so docile, and even with the new babies, you can go in there. I of course don't let my children in with a sow with new piglets, but I myself, and they're used to me, and they still like their scratches, and they're not overly protective of their babies. Like I said, really, our one sow, we're getting ready to wean her piglets this weekend, and I have not seen their temperaments change one bit with becoming mothers. So it just kind of made me love the breed even more. And they've been, out on the pasture. They do have access. We didn't have the best option for them farrowing out in the pasture. They could have went into a hut, but I'm a little bit of a protective pig mom. So they did have the option of an open stall in the barn, and that's actually where they came in and farrowed both times. So they've been absolutely lovely and very low maintenance, even through having suckling pigs and everything. So
excellent. So are you looking forward? Are you going to be in a once a year breeding cycle? Are you going to try to get more production out of them, or just kind of let it go?
That's a very good question. Not really sure yet. We'll kind of just see what road the good Lord leads us down, I guess. But we would really like to, I guess our main focus is producing meat for our family and a few clients, but then also having the availability to offer up good breeding stock to other people that are in the area. Our only drawback is, we do have the 2 gilts, and they are full sisters, and the 1 boar. So in order to, offer someone a good breeding trio, of course, we would need to bring in some new genetics. So not exactly sure, it was such a blessing. We actually, when we offered up our pigs that we had fed out for sale, it was about 3 weeks before they were to go to the processor that we finally put them out there and available. And within 24 hours, we sold every pig that we had on hook. So that was a pretty amazing experience because we kind of dove into this, but then went, this should be interesting as far as the marketing goes.
Yeah.
And we sold in whole and half hogs, so we were extremely pleased with that outcome. Of course, with 40 acres, to some that might seem like a lot, to some it seems like very little, but we are kind of limited in order to do things the way that we really want to, and the way that we see being not only good for the animal, but good for our farm and for, Mother Nature as well, that we don't want to get too high of numbers. So for right now, keeping the 2 sows and the 1 boar, and then we'll probably breed them again next year. It's a good fit for us for now. So we will see where our production goes and exactly, depending upon the market and depending upon, like I said, we are a little bit limited, just because of our farm model that we have on just how much we can produce.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'll back up there for a second because you said something that really got my attention, and it sounds like your first year of sales worked out really well. But I advise anybody starting out, don't wait 3 weeks before you're going to the processor to start selling your hogs.
Yes, I would agree. And we were very fortunate too, because we do pastured poultry. So we have some clientele that purchases chicken and turkey from us. So we have a pretty good following that way. And we had already been putting out there, that we do have these Mulefoot hogs through farmers market and everything. We hadn't put out a price list or started a waiting list or anything like that. I was just feeling a little superstitious. Don't count your eggs before they hatch. So we held off literally what was the last minute to actually sell those pigs. But, that's kind of the beauty of the Mulefoot as well. I was a little bit nervous about that, and being 3 weeks from our processing date at the point in time that we said, hey, here's what we are offering available right now. And but my husband was great to say, hey, you know what? The nice thing is with the Mulefoot, if we end up keeping them a little bit longer, we're not out that much. We're not pouring a ton of grain into them every single month. So they also are so slow growing. It's not like you're going to have a Godzilla of a pig, if you wait till the spring to butcher the same pig. It's just going to be slightly larger. So that is kind of the blessing, I guess, and the curse of the Mulefoot is that they are slower growing. But if you don't sell out of the Mulefoots that you have, when you're getting ready and when they could go to processor, keeping them around for a few more months is not going to be a huge downfall either.
Yeah, and you said something there. Back up again a little bit. The fact that there's that you have a polyculture when it comes to your meat production, and that's something I've always kind of tried to hang my hat on and preach the fact that if you've got a customer base through egg production, you got a customer base through pastured poultry production, or some other source of protein, or some other services, products or services you're offering, then that just helps open the door to get to these larger products. You sell, I'm sure in your situation, you sell your clients eggs or chicken meat, you move up to pigs, and then of course it's easy to sell the Dexters, or vice versa. You're selling Dexters, beef to people, and then you can cross sell the pork or the poultry at that point.
Yes, and especially with us being more of that niche market, not only with the meats that we have, but also with the fact that we do things organic. So that kind of in itself almost has its own following. And so when you get clients that are that appreciate the pastured and the organic meats, they really are wonderful to say, hey, I want to try this. And so it is, it's great to have that, like you said, the polyculture, and to just have a lot of different offerings on our farm that are smaller offerings, but that get people involved, if you will, with your farm via social media or a website. And then it helps to sell those larger products as well. Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. Well, how is processing going for you? Obviously, in Iowa, you probably can swing a cat around by a tail and hit as many processors as you want. So, did you have any issues there finding a good processor?
We are very blessed, especially in our location, that we have some wonderful processors that we've used for several years now. And that, again, the community of people that are purchasing meat from us have had great experiences with the processors as well. So the way that we do it is, within our local area, we have about 4 processors that we offer people. We will deliver your hog here to any one of these 4. We do kind of say, hey, here's the plus and minus. Here's what we've seen. If you want something that's going to be vacuum sealed, this is the processor that you want. But they have been so wonderful. All of them have been, to work with us and to work with our clients. And that we have absolutely no complaints. The only downfall that we have for our location, and again, this seems really odd since we are in Iowa, but the only downfall that we have is we would really like to, as we increase production, be able to offer certain cuts of meat so that people can buy a ham, or they can buy some pork steaks instead of having to buy a whole or a half of a hog. And that is a little bit crippling here, just because we're looking at about a 2-hour road trip to the nearest USDA certified processor that would allow us to be able to sell just cuts of meat. So, yeah, that's a little bit of a jaunt, and the price is over double what it actually is for regular processing on a pig. So again, that it's kind of like, well, how do we do that? We haven't exactly figured that out yet. And I feel like we put out a really good quality product, but we also try and keep it as affordable as possible for our clients. And right now, the processing to sell retail cuts just is not looking like that is the most viable option for keeping it real affordable.
So that's interesting, because in Iowa, I didn't realize in Iowa that that you have the 2 levels of processing. Obviously, USDA allows you to sell nationwide because it's federally inspected. But here in West Virginia, we have state inspection where I'm allowed to sell cuts as long as I don't cross the state line. So you're saying in Iowa, even if you go to your local processors that aren't USDA, you can't sell cuts. It either has to be wholes or halves?
Correct. So any of our processors in our local area, you can buy a live hog, off of our farm, right, yeah, and you pay me for the whole or the half pig once they have the hanging weight. But then you, as the client, will actually go to the processor and pick up your whole or half hog and pay them for the processing. So I cannot sell those retail cuts of meat. It requires a plant that has a USDA processor there from start to finish every single day, and it requires a completely different set of labels. Yeah. So that's been and it's the same way. We're lucky, we're fortunate, because we're only about a little over an hour 15 minutes from a USDA poultry processing plant. So it is a little bit different state to state.
Okay, so even with your poultry, you're sending it out to be processed and not processed on the farm.
Yes. There's a lot of, again, legal loopholes that make you go, that we just rather would not get tied up in, So if we take them with our birds, we take them to a USDA licensed processor that is licensed and inspected for us to sell them individually. We just kind of avoid that gray area. So we just like to keep things black and white as possible.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Well, Lindsay, let's. I really appreciate the discussion here on the setup of your farm. But one thing I'd like to spend a little time talking about here as we wrap up is, what's the motivation and why did you choose the endangered species? I mean, that's a lot of extra work. I'm sure there's a lot of extra hoops that you have to jump through there. So why the gravitation towards these 5 different endangered species and your desire to raise them on your farm?
I've always been an animal lover, always have been. And when we started looking at it, it actually goes back to our Mulefoot hogs. And when my husband and I started researching hog breeds to have on our farm, I, for the first time in my lifetime, became aware of an organization called the Livestock Conservancy. And that is where we found the Mulefoot hogs and the first mention of the Mulefoot hogs, and that they were on a list that was critically endangered. So as I started researching pig breeds, I was absolutely shocked and appalled to find out that since during the 1900s, that actually 14 hog breeds went completely extinct. Like, that was just completely mind-boggling to me. It's like, how does that happen? And so then I started reading in on the story of the Mulefoot and how they were thought to be extinct at one time. And how a certain particular breeder in Missouri had really worked hard to revive and keep the breed going and moving forward. So once we brought Mulefoots onto the farm, I was hooked, and we kind of got to researching. We had meat goats previously, but the parasite issues that we were having, and just not a hardy animal. We had boar goats, and so they are from South America. So bringing them into the Iowa climate was just, we had much higher production losses than I had ever experienced in any with any livestock breed that I'd had throughout my lifetime. And so as we started looking at, well, which direction do we want to go with our goats? I found the San Clemente Island goat on the Livestock Conservancy. And I'm like, this might be a really good fit for us. The biggest hurdle that we've found with these critically endangered breeds is the fact that their populations, the numbers are so low. So our Mulefoot hogs are right about 800. Same with the San Clemente Island goats, about 700-800. But when we get into things like our barred Holland chickens, and in particular our Dutch hook-billed ducks, there was actually only one place in the United States, which was in Arizona, to get the Dutch hook-billed ducks from. So with all of these animals, our San Clemente Island goats, actually one came from New Hampshire, two came from Maine, two came from Wisconsin, and we have a little girl coming in next month from California. So you can about imagine importing animals from all over the country like that is a very large expenditure in its own. However, I really love and enjoy my livestock. I do. Being a stay-at-home mom with 3 boys, they're just kind of, some ladies like to go to the nail salon, some ladies like to go to the spa. I really like going out to my barn. So they are phenomenal therapy, and I really enjoy the education opportunities that come along with it too. So we've been able to take some of our poultry and photos of our other livestock into our local schools and really go and talk to these kids. And it's amazing how much, we live in Iowa. We're a huge monoculture farming community. And how many of these children have never been up close with a duck before, and so it's just fascinating. We also have a Dutch heritage in our community, and the Dutch hookbills are originally from Holland. And again, the things that happened that almost led to their extinction and how the breed was, brought back from that is wonderful. And so I really enjoy also the opportunities of getting to talk to people and other small hobby farms or homesteads that are interested in keeping a breed of livestock that is maybe a little less conventional. And so us having them, it just, every person that has them and keeps them and breeds them and really puts forth the effort to learn about the particular breed characteristics and the genetics behind these animals is key to keeping them around for generations, and the genetic diversity that comes from having the different heritage breeds is just, to me, it's just one of those things that we really can't afford to lose. But I really I enjoy it. I love them, love them to pieces. And, it makes our farm a little more unique, but right now it's just kind of where the good Lord has called us to be. So this is where we are.
Very good. All right. So one more question, and these questions keep popping into my head, so it's not necessarily in logical order there. But you had mentioned earlier about free ranging a lot of these animals. Do you have any predator issues? Have you found a solution to get around predation?
We do. We actually have tremendous predator issues, so out here, we have all of the predators from the sky, the hawks and the owls and the eagles. But we also have the coyotes and the bobcats. So we have a large, about 300-acre plot of timber that borders our farm on two sides. So you can about imagine what that's like for bobcats and coyotes. And the absolute best thing that we did on this farm was about 2 years ago. We brought home 2 Great Pyrenees, and our losses were huge before that. We actually, in one evening, had bobcats come in, and even though the coop door was closed, it had blown open in the wind, and they annihilated every chicken we had on the farm in just one night. And we had some other losses along the way as well, and that's when I finally said, okay, I'm done. So I am very thankful to report that we have only actually had 2 chicken losses in the 2 years that we've had our Great Pyrenees, and those were both due to, aerial predators, whether it be a hawk or an eagle, and was during the day. So they have been absolutely phenomenal. Actually, today even I looked out in the far pasture, and here was our sow and her 3 piglets, and there was a bobcat stalking them along the one fence line. And it was I didn't have to get concerned over it. I knew it was going to be taken care of. So our dogs are definitely the reason that I sleep well at night. So
that's great. Yeah, good investment there, definitely, and a very natural way to stave off predation. Well,
yes,
right.
Yes, they are.
Well, let's, Lindsay, one question I always like to wrap up with on the podcast is, what is your best experience or favorite part about raising pigs on pasture?
Oh, hands down the babies.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the babies. Now my husband would tell you his favorite part is the end, with the processing, when he literally gets to bring home the bacon.
That's right. Yes.
That would be his absolute favorite. But for me, it's really the relationship with the animals. My sow's names are Polly and Petunia, and our boar is Boss Hog. And those 3 just have such unique and wonderful personalities. We had a student out here that was volunteering not too long ago, and he said, he goes, out of all of the livestock, he said, I'm so intrigued by the personality of the pigs. They are so much more interactive with people than even the chickens and the goats, all of those things. Just the pigs have just such big personalities, and they're incredibly smart. Some days that is to a detriment, but I really enjoy all of it. But boy, oh boy, there's nothing like going out and finding that new little nest of piglets.
Yeah, it is. That piglet time on the farm is definitely a great time. That's when everybody enjoys that time. It's a great opportunity.
Right. Yes.
Well, all right. Well, Lindsay, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, despite our technical difficulties there at the beginning. I appreciate you sticking with me, and I appreciate you sharing your story with us. If people want to find out more about Prodigy Farms, where can they find you?
So we are Prodigy Farms on Facebook or on Instagram. We also have a small website, which is prodigyfarmspella.com. And if you're interested, and of course, the Livestock Conservancy is a great place to go to find out all kinds of information on the different levels of endangered heritage livestock breeds as well.
All right. Well, again, appreciate you coming on. I pray you have a good evening and a good week this week.
Thank you very much, Troy.
Okay, take care.
Well, I really appreciate Lindsay taking the time to talk with us. If you want to see more about Prodigy Farms, show description, of course, will have the details there. Well, I hope everyone has a great week, and I pray you have a good week out in the pasture. Take care.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes, visit redtoolhouse.com.